Chapter 17. Time, Part 2. Souls wisped around Twilight Sparkle, spiraling around a jagged rift in the center of Black Plains. Formations of obsidian rock jutted from the landscape. A pillar of shadow rose from the middle of the rift. She stepped forward until her hooves were poised on the edge. She looked down. An empty void opened like a maw around the base of the pillar. Violet energy spiraled around it like water around a drain. The specter stepped up beside her on legs of bone. When she turned to look at its white face, it spoke. "Look up." Twilight tilted her head back. Above, 12 black wings spread from the pillar and stretched across the sky, blotting out any light that might have streamed from above. Countless closed eyes covered their underside. They opened, revealing red orbs, and all turned to look at her. Within each, she glimpsed the soul of a living creature. Fear gripped her. She took a hurried step back. She hit a ribcage. The specter whispered in her ear. "Do you see your destiny?" She recoiled from the specter. The edges of the ravine crumbled beneath her hooves, and she tumbled off of it. She reached out to save herself, but there was nothing to grab. Above, she saw herself poised on the lip of the ravine. Her eyes were closed, and black feathered wings spread from her back. The apparition opened her red eyes and stared down at Twilight. The black silhouettes of pony souls had replaced her pupils. Twilight gasped as she came awake. The wind ripped past her, whipping at her mane and tail. She cracked her eyes open. Her hair streamed past her face, and a dark blue sky lit on one side by the orange glow of the sun filled her field of view. She was oddly comfortable, though the air chilled her back. She tucked in her forelegs and rotated around in midair like a cat, righting herself. A smattering of clouds dwelled below, far beneath her, above a jagged line where land met sea. She tensed. She was falling. She had felt no pull downward, no acceleration that normally accompanied the experience.
"I'm in free fall,"
she realized. She blinked, but the air dried her eyes again almost instantly, forcing her to squint them nearly shut. She traveled towards a gray mass surrounded by a faint line on the edge of the sea. She identified it as Candlekeep. As the structures drew closer, an arc of arcane energy burst toward the sky, cutting a rift in the center of the keep. She was headed straight towards it. Turning her head, she checked the position of the sun. It was dawn. She had been in that room containing the core for hours. She hoped that her friends had enough time to get everyone out. She focused on the ground moving toward her as she passed the highest level of the clouds.
"All right, Twilight, think,"
she told herself. Through her nostrils, she sucked a deep breath from the air rushing past.
"You've gotten yourself out of situations worse than this. You might not have any spells left, but you can still form one before you hit the ground."
She closed her eyes, piecing together a dimension door spell. She hoped she could cast it before she hit Candlekeep at least. But almost before she had begun, the spell pathetically fizzled on her horn. She gasped, opening her eyes. She had no magic left. She was tapped. She felt like a sponge wrung dry.
"I'm going to die,"
she realized. Panicking, she flailed at a passing cloud. In that moment, she would have given anything to be a Pegasus. The motion threw her into an uncontrolled spin.
I don't want to die,
she thought as the world twisted past.
It doesn't matter who cares about me. It doesn't matter what they've done for me. It doesn't matter what I am. I have so much to be, so much to do.
As she spun, the forest beneath flew past in a green blur, and she saw a rainbow. It was strange, rippling out from a central point in a horizontal ring. With every turn, she glimpsed a rainbow streak rising from the center of the ring, climbing higher and higher. The leading edge of the rainbow ring blasted away the clouds beneath her. A sound like a thunderclap drowned out even the roar of the wind in her ears. The rainbow streak curved into the sky above her and arced down toward her. The next time the ground turned past, it was surprisingly close. Another 2 arcs of energy cleaved through Candlekeep. Her rotation faced her toward the sky again. Rainbow closed in on her with hooves outstretched, her mane and tail streaking out behind her and blurring into a rainbow trail. Twilight continued her roll, and Rainbow exited her field of view. Candlekeep loomed beneath her, and 3 blazing arcs ravaged its structures. She screamed. The ground was too close.
I don't want to die!
Hooves contacted her body.
Gotcha!
Rainbow shouted. Something scraped the outside of her ear and lodged between it and her scalp, held by her mane. In an instant, the wind was gone. She came to a near stop, no spinning, no falling, and drifted slowly down. She reached up and touched the golden feather behind her ear as she looked down. The ground that had seemed so close while she was speeding towards it was hundreds of hoofspans away. Beneath her, Candlekeep warped, every portion of the keep crumbling inwards. A white light rushed up from beneath the structure, expanding as a sphere until it reached the outer walls. The brightness of it drove spikes of pain into her eyes, but she couldn't look away. She heard a faint whoosh as the sphere collapsed inward to a single point and winked out of existence altogether. There was no thunderous explosion, no rumble as rubble tumbled into the sea. Candlekeep was gone, thoroughly and completely. The ground beneath it had been reshaped into a near smooth curve. Layers of dirt rested on exposed bedrock. The only sign that Candlekeep had ever even been there was a lone road that led to nothing but a strange bite out of the cliffs. The greatest repository of knowledge in all Equestria was gone.
Whoa,
Rainbow said, hovering beside Twilight.
Did they all make it out?
Twilight asked. She twisted, trying to rotate in the air, but only succeeded at pulling a muscle in her neck.
Now that we've got you, every pony made it.
Rainbow moved in, wrapping her forelegs around Twilight. She squeezed tight. Twilight returned to the hug.
How did you know I was still alive? How did you find me in all of this sky?
Rainbow pulled away.
I felt it. We all did. It was like a tug on our hearts or something. And I knew I was the only one who could get to you in time.
She looked down.
Until I felt it. I was just waiting for Candlekeep to explode or something, and you to die. I hate waiting.
Twilight smiled.
You did it, Rainbow.
Rainbow smiled back, tears in her eyes.
I had to catch you.
She grabbed Twilight with a hoof and started to tug her through the air.
Come on. Let's get back to the others. Rainbow? Yeah? Thank you.
Rainbow pulled her into a gentle landing beside the road. The citizens of Candlekeep huddled beneath the trees on either side. Some of them looked forlornly toward the horizon that had been lit by the magical explosion a few minutes ago. Her friends were gathered to meet her. The moment Twilight's hooves were on the ground, Spike appeared and lunged. He wrapped his arms around her neck, bumping her muzzle with his head. "Twilight!" Twilight rubbed her nose with a hoof.
Ow! Spike!
She wrapped her other foreleg around him and pulled him close. With her magic, she passed the golden feather back to Rainbow. Pinky was next, hitting her left side like a missile. Twilight gasped as she squeezed tight.
You made it! Pinky, Spike, could you give her some space, please? She could be hurt.
Fluttershy said. Pinky and Spike reluctantly pulled away.
I'm fine, Fluttershy,
Twilight said with a smile. She looked around at the survivors from Candlekeep, her smile fading.
How are they?
Rarity followed her gaze.
Shaken. All they have is what they managed to grab while we got them out. They're going to need help.
She patted Twilight's shoulder.
But none of us would have made it without you.
How did you make it out? Applejack asked. Last I heard, you sacrificed yourself so that we could get out, and we were waiting for you to die. She tipped her hat. You saved us all.
I made a portal to somewhere else.
Twilight gazed up at the sky.
Somewhere up there. I think it was part of the celestial plane. It was safe.
She closed her eyes. For a moment, despite the changeling ichor still crusted into her fur, her face felt clean beneath the sun's rays.
She was there,
she murmured.
Who?
Rainbow and Pinky asked in unison.
Celestia,
Twilight said.
She told me some things.
She looked at Fluttershy.
Is Cadence awake? She's been in and out, but she'll be fine.
Fluttershy said.
Where?
Twilight asked. Fluttershy pointed to the trees. Twilight turned and headed in the indicated direction. With her first step, her hoof slipped on a rock. Her vision swam as she regained her balance. She shook her head, focused ahead, and took another step. The next thing she knew, she was overbalanced and tipping to the side. Before she could fall, she collided with something firm. Whoa there, Twilight. Easy does it, Applejack said, supporting her. You okay? Twilight leaned on Applejack.
I'm fine.
She closed her eyes briefly, and a sense of vertigo gripped her.
Why is walking hard?
She muttered under her breath. Applejack chuckled. You, Twilight Sparkle, are exhausted.
Oh. I still need to talk to Cadence,
Twilight said.
Could you help me walk over?
She added sheepishly.
Please?
When Twilight arrived leaning on Applejack, Cadence looked up at her from her seat at the base of a tree. Cadence's eyes were sharp and focused. Twilight dropped wearily onto her haunches.
How much do you know?
Twilight asked. Cadence looked puzzled for a moment, but she said,
I remember some pony mentioning something about changelings last time I was awake.
She looked down at her hooves.
They said we were all replaced.
Twilight nodded.
You were. Where is Shining Armor?
Cadence asked.
Why didn't he save me? I don't know,
Twilight said.
Either he was fooled by the imposter or he's in on it.
Cadence's eyes widened in shock. She shook her head.
He can't have been. Not Shining. What's the last thing you remember about Shining Armor?
Twilight asked. Cadence frowned. She took a deep breath.
He was disappearing at night. Money was missing.
She closed her eyes tight.
He can't have been seeing some pony else. He wouldn't.
Twilight furrowed her brows. The pieces were beginning to come together.
I don't think he was,
she said.
How long has this been going on?
Cadence opened her eyes.
It wasn't long after we were married that I noticed it.
She leaned forward and flopped onto the grass.
He said we were going to handle the alicorn thing together.
Twilight eyed Cadence's wings and horn.
How did it happen?
Cadence breathed a deep sigh.
I don't know.
She glanced up at Twilight.
Do you know Sunny Skies?
Twilight nodded.
She came to my door the day after. She said she represented Celestia. She said that I'd been blessed with the legacy of a demigod. She said that an entire people needed their queen to wake up.
Cadence said.
I don't know why. She was supposed to tell me more soon, but that night, while Shining was gone, she visited again.
She closed her eyes and shivered.
What is it?
Twilight asked.
That's the last thing I remember. Sunny Skies showed up and there was a green flash.
Cadence said.
If the date I've been told is right, that was over a year ago.
She focused intently on Twilight.
You fought changelings. You have to help me save Shining Armor. If you need money, I have that.
Twilight raised a hoof.
I don't care about money. But I have one more question. Did you ever see Shining Armor cast spells in armor?
Cadence blinked.
Huh? He tries not to show that to very many ponies, but I've seen him do it once. It's a talent of his. Why is that important?
Cadence had just put the final nail in the coffin. There was no doubt left in Twilight's mind about the identity of the Black Knight.
Shining Armor isn't who you think he is.
With a surge of new energy, Twilight clambered to her feet.
And we're going to stop him before he uses his position as a duke to start a war in your name. Duke?
Cadence asked.
Shining wasn't a duke.
Twilight ignored her and turned to Applejack.
Tell Chancellor or Thunderfoot to get these ponies moving toward Ponyville.
She glanced around, looking for Rainbow.
Rainbow!
She shouted.
Here!
Rainbow said a moment later, landing beside her.
Fly to Ponyville.
She pointed toward the survivors from Candlekeep.
Ask Granny Smith to send help their way. Just fly along the road to Manhattan to find us again.
Rainbow nodded sharply.
Sure thing.
She shot effortlessly back into the air and spread her wings wide. A moment later, the trees blocked Twilight's view. Twilight closed Star Swirl's journal and stared into the flickering campfire in front of her. She knew everyone was looking at her, even Rainbow. She had waited for them to all be together again to go over the information. No pony said a word. The fire crackled in the silence. Applejack tipped back her hat. And Celestia said... Twilight nodded.
Yeah. I don't believe it.
Cadence said.
Shining isn't a shadow spawn. He never acted like...
Twilight glared sharply at her.
He never acted like what? Like me?
She interrupted. Cadence looked down at her hooves.
He did kill some ponies, but they were trying to hurt me, or him. Any pony would have done the same. He killed my father, and all he did was try to stop him from killing me,"
Twilight said. Cadence's eyes widened in shock. Twilight glanced around the fireplace. One pony was missing.
"Where's Pinky?"
she asked, standing.
"I dunno,"
Spike said, glancing around.
"She was right here a second ago." "She must need some time alone,"
Rarity said.
"I can only imagine what it must be like to learn that her family died so horribly." "I don't think that's what's bothering her,"
Twilight murmured, remembering the black speck she had seen marring Pinky's soul. She stepped away from the fire. Twilight sighed and stepped under a tree. She looked up at the stars.
"If Pinky doesn't want to be found, I'm not going to find her."
A point of light flashed across the night sky above. A shooting star.
"If only making a wish would actually work,"
she muttered to herself while she gouged a furrow in the dirt with the edge of her hoof.
"I should have thought about what it all meant before dumping that on her." "Hey, Twilight,"
Pinky said from somewhere nearby. Twilight snapped her head from side to side, looking around.
"Huh? Pinky? Where are you?"
she asked. Pinky giggled.
"Other side of the tree, silly."
Twilight walked around the thick trunk. Sure enough, Pinky sat on the far side, nestled between two roots. In her hooves, she held the black book she had retrieved from the tomb beneath Candlekeep. Twilight plopped onto her haunches beside Pinky.
"Hey."
Pinky stared at the empty pages.
"I remembered something about this book. I need to activate it for it to do anything."
She lifted the book and held it close to her mouth.
"I'm scared. I'm lost. And I'm alone. Will you be my friend?"
she whispered. Ink rippled across the page, as if blown onto it by Pinky's breath. It was smoky and mottled at first, but the face of a smiling pony with a long, wispy beard materialized. His mouth moved, and Twilight heard him speak. "Place your hoof on the page, and we can begin," he said, his voice filled with friendly cheer. Obediently, Pinky put her hoof on the page. The face faded as the ink moved, outlining the hoof. It solidified, then vanished. The page shredded into brightly colored confetti and launched into the air with a gust of wind. "Your cheerfulness is strong. I can no longer teach you. You've walked farther on the ever-smiling path than I was able to, and you will make the world a far brighter place," the voice said. It sounded sad, like it was saying goodbye to an old friend.
"Huh. That's never happened before,"
Pinky murmured as the book floated out of her hooves, lifted by some unseen force. Before Twilight's eyes, it morphed into a white sash. The sash fluttered in the air for a moment, then settled on Pinky's outstretched foreleg. Pinky tied the sash around her waist with a smile.
"I guess he wants to stay with me,"
she said, moisture glistening in her eyes.
"He always made things so simple."
She turned to Twilight.
"Why can't we go back to when things were simple?" "Things aren't the way they were before,"
Twilight said.
"But we have each other."
She lifted her hoof.
"Friends forever?"
Pinky smiled and bumped her hoof.
"Through eternity."
She took a deep breath.
"Things aren't so scary when you have friends," I've never seen you afraid of anything,
Twilight said with a half smile.
not even the Sand Ravager. Remember when I killed that pony?
Pinky said.
I cried. I was sad because he'd never smile again. But I was crying because I was scared.
She looked at Twilight intently.
You know what the really scary part was? I liked it.
Pinky pulled her forehoof back and drove it into the tree. Wooden splinters flew from the point of impact, and Twilight reflexively shielded her eyes with a foreleg. When she looked again, Pinky's foreleg was buried into the tree up to her elbow.
And I would do it again,
she murmured as she pulled her limb free, seemingly unharmed.
I haven't killed since then. Not even the Diamond Dogs. I put them where they would be killed, but I never did it myself. Because I was scared.
She focused on Twilight again.
Aren't you scared, Twilight? Should I be?
Twilight asked.
I guess I am. I'm afraid of what I might become. But all being a shadow spawn has done has enabled me to do what needed to be done. Could I have killed when I needed to without it? Would I be as strong as I am? Could I have helped ponies?
Pinky pulled her into an embrace.
Promise me you won't give in.
Twilight sighed.
I promise.
Pinky pulled away and glared at her.
Pinky promise! Cross my heart and hope to fly. Stick a cupcake in my eye.
Twilight recited. As Twilight made her way back to camp with Pinky, Cadence approached her.
May I speak with you for a moment?
Twilight nodded and followed Cadence away from the fire. The alicorn held her head high and walked steadily. Between her own exhaustion and Cadence's recovery, they hadn't been making much progress in the first day of travel, but Cadence was showing promise. If they kept a decent pace, they'd make it to Manhattan in time. When they were out of earshot, Cadence turned to Twilight.
You're going to kill him, aren't you?
Unable to meet Cadence's gaze, Twilight looked up at the stars.
I don't know.
She lied.
At least give him a chance,
Cadence pleaded. Twilight said nothing.
Please?
Twilight sighed.
I'll try.